You may remember a report about 2 months ago where the Department of Government Efficiency came out and said they were going to cancel roughly 200,000 federal government credit cards. Well, we have an update on that because now we're hearing where some of these federal agencies were spending their money. Some of which were spending their money on casinos, nightclubs, bars, Super Bowl parties, online purchases, their OnlyFans, right? The list goes on and on. It is absolutely insane where the American tax dollars were actually going. And according to reports, there's about $40 billion that were spent on credit cards in just fiscal year 2024 alone. I want to break down what's going on. Again, this may get your blood boiling. It did mine, but just understand this is kind of the route we're headed towards because the Department of Government Efficiency wants all that money back. So let's get to the update for today. But first, before I do, all I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So this is the story that I'm referring to. It says DOGE and agencies cancel 200,000 federal government credit cards. It says DOGE says that federal agencies spent $40 billion using credit cards in fiscal year 2024. Now, I want to read a little bit of this article first, but then I want to show you where this money is being spent. Look at this right here. It says the Department of Government Efficiency announced that it has deactivated more than 200,000 credit cards linked to more than a dozen federal agencies following audit showing they were unused or unneeded. They stopped credit card usage because they were being unused or that specific department didn't need it. But now we're learning of potential fraud. It says the announcement came as Elon Musk-led agency continues to root out waste, fraud, and corruption in the federal government. It says, this came from the DOGE X account, weekly credit card update. Pilot program with 16 agencies to audit unused, unneeded credit cards. Okay. Then we get an update. This update came just a few days ago. It says Republicans demand probe into DOD's taxpayer-funded charges at casinos, bars, and nightclubs. It says the federal charge card reform demanded as audit reveals nearly 2 cards per employee and $40 billion in annual spending. This is the article we need to go over because I know many people are a little bit taken back by how much the federal government spends, which they don't need to. $40 billion on credit cards? That's a massive bill. Keep in mind, the Department of Government Efficiency, as of May 11th, so about 11 days ago, we should get an update here very soon, they've saved about $170 billion, but according to some reports, that $170 billion, if we factor in the fraud, that could actually push that amount closer to $200 billion. And that's the fraud from some of these unneeded expenses that people were putting it on their credit cards. Now, look at this right here. It says, in a letter addressed to Comptroller General Gene Dodaro, Ernst & Comer called on the Government Accountability Office to launch a comprehensive review of all federal charge card programs. It says the demand follows alarming findings from recent audits that point to systemic failures in oversight, including the issuance of nearly 2 charge cards per federal employee and more than $40 billion in spending last fiscal year. Look at this. It says the Pentagon's Inspector General found nearly 8,000 Defense Department credit card transactions at what they call high-risk locations. This includes casino ATMs over the past year. An additional 3,246 transactions occurred at bars and nightclubs, many of them on federal holidays like Super Bowl Sunday, St. Patrick's Day, and the day of the UFC 300, Cinco de Mayo, and New Year's Eve. So, why would on a federal holiday would a government employee need to go and use an ATM machine to pull cash out? Why is this even acceptable that somebody has a charge card can stick the card into an ATM machine and pull out hundreds of dollars. Okay? That is absolutely insane that they are taking that money from taxpayers. But they're going to go after them. Just listen to this, though. It says, it is indefensible for Department of Defense bureaucrats to waste tax dollars at clubs, casinos, and bars, racking up charges on Super Bowl Sunday, St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo, and federal holidays. It says the DOD is not alone. Recent GOA reports have found agencies consistently fail to use tools to analyze purchase card data and prevent fraud. It says with Washington $36 trillion in debt, the last thing we need is bureaucrats maxing out their tab and sticking taxpayers with the bill. There should never be more credit cards than federal employees, and I'm working to create accountability government-wide. Now, some reports are indicating that this new department is going to start looking at the federal employees that spent the most money, that took out money from ATM machines. And they need to really dig down to this and figure out where that money went. If there's not a legitimate paper trail, according to the reports, Republicans are going to go after every single one of these federal employees. Now, here's where things get interesting. Some of these employees have already been let go. Well, essentially took a voluntary leave of absence, right? Paid leave, by the way. Some of which they decided they are going to step back from their position, but they're still going to get benefits and pay all the way until the end of September. According to these reports, the federal government or the Trump administration, if they go after these people and the people have left their position, what they're essentially going to do is they will actually cut them off immediately. So some of these people that are going to be found guilty of defrauding the federal government, instead of taking them to court and going through that whole route, they're simply just going to say, you know what, you can't show us proof that you took $400 out of the ATM machine at this casino at this time. You can't show proof of why you needed it from a federal spending standpoint. So we're just going to let you go instead of taking you to court and trying to fight and get that money back. Most of those employees most likely will agree to that because, again, who wants to go to court? But I want to keep reading this to you. It says in this letter, it also highlighted the illegal practice of split purchases, where government employees intentionally divide large transactions to stay under the $3,500 micro purchase threshold, the largest purchase that can be put on a federal charge card. Despite being a clear violation of federal regulation, these practices reportedly continue due to inadequate monitoring and enforcement. That is something that is insane. Okay? They have a limit of $3,500 on a card. Who is spending that much money? And how can that go through without some type of oversight? Shouldn't there be somebody that signs off on it? And that person should be accountable for everything. If they signed off on something, there should be a reason why, there should be a paper trail, and that is who the federal government would go after. That could be the new direction we are going. I want to read you one last thing, though. It says American taxpayers, and this is from Comer as well, it says American taxpayers shouldn't be stuck paying for federal bureaucrats' splurges on government-issued credit cards. Tax dollars are meant to fund essential government services, not dating apps, nightclubs, and bar tabs. Now, here's what I think is interesting about all this, okay? And just keep this in mind. Right now, there's a lot of speculation that the federal government or the Trump administration is going to have a mass layoff event again. They're trying to get the Supreme Court to sign off on it. Well, many individuals, many taxpayers are frustrated at the fact that the Trump administration is trying to lay off thousands of employees. But at the same time, and again, this is what's frustrating to me. I understand why the federal government's attempting to lay off employees, but again, that I don't think is needed. I don't think we need to lay off, 500,000 employees, okay? I don't think we need to lay off another 100,000 employees. I think small layoffs, potentially, but again, this is very minimal. But the issue is there's too much fraud. Here's the problem, okay? Coming from an aide to a U.S. senator, the problem is that right now, the Department of Government Efficiency is getting so much pushback from every single agency. And again, why would an agency not want the Department of Government Efficiency in their business? Because they know there's going to be fraud. It's just the way it works. It's so big. There's nobody monitoring the whole thing. There's going to be fraud. And once that fraud is found, the U.S. government and Congress is likely going to cut the budget to that program, if not cut the entire program. That's the issue. So again, I understand why the Department of Government Efficiency is going after all these different agencies, these different programs, to try to find the fraud. But here's my frustration. I don't want to be paying for somebody else to go and have a great time at a bar. I don't want to be paying for somebody to go watch the Super Bowl. Okay? I don't want to be paying for somebody's gambling addiction. I don't want to be paying for any of it. I only want to pay my taxes that are going to go to essential programs. That's it. Essential programs. To help feed those that are in need. Help veterans. Okay? To help and put money aside for Social Security. And make sure that the United States is safe. Right? That's what I want. Now again, I don't know about you, but are you a little bit frustrated that we are now hearing more and more reports that we are spending, and I don't know how much of the $40 billion from fiscal year 2024 is fraud or pretty much waste. But I could speculate it's a good percentage. So we'll see what happens, but the nice thing is that they are starting to figure this out. They're starting to kind of open up these doors and see what's happening. Maybe, just maybe, we put an end to this fraud and this abuse. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but that's what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.